In this video, I will show you how to replace the air intake door actuator in a 4th generation Kia Sportage. The intake actuator controls the air door that switches between outside air and the cabin's recirculated air. When it fails, you will notice that the recirculation button on the climate control does not make any change in airflow. For example, the airflow is stuck to outside air even when the recirculation button is pressed. You might also hear a clicking noise behind the glove box, because that is where the intake actuator is located. To replace it, you will have to remove the glove box housing. Before we begin, for safety reasons, disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. Start by taking off the crash pad undercover located beneath the glove box. Press the 2 locking tabs along the front edge to release them, then gently pull the panel downward. Once the front clips are free, slide the panel towards you to disengage it from the rear hooks and remove it completely. Now open the glove box and take out any items inside. Next, twist the stoppers on both sides counterclockwise to release them. Unclip the damper arm from the side. This allows the glove box to swing down completely. Next, push out the hinge pins at the bottom to fully remove the glove box. With the glove box out of the way, you will see the cabin air filter compartment. The air intake actuator is mounted right beside it, attached to the HVAC housing. But you cannot remove it from here. There isn't much space. You will have to take out the entire glove box housing. Before you can remove the glove box housing, you will first need to take off the long trim piece that stretches across the dashboard. This trim hides a few screws that secure the glove box housing in place, so it has to come off first. To remove this trim, you will first have to loosen the upper cover of the center console. Before you begin, it is best to move the gear shifter into neutral position. Make sure the parking brake is firmly engaged or place wheel chocks against one of the tires for safety. Next, use a flathead screwdriver to gently pry off the small cap covering the shift block release button. Press the button and move the gear shifter into the neutral position. This will give you enough space to lift the center console cover without obstruction. Next, loosen the upper cover by gripping the panel near the armrest area and gently pulling it upward. You will hear the clips releasing as you work your way along the edges. There is no need to remove the cover completely. Just lift it enough to create some clearance so you can easily remove the long trim piece across the dashboard. Once that's done, move over to the passenger side of the dashboard. You will find a small side panel near the door that conceals a screw holding the long trim piece in place. Begin by gently pulling back the rubber weather strip along the door frame, just enough to expose the panel's edge. Look for a small notch near the bottom of the side cover and insert a plastic trim tool or a flathead screwdriver. Carefully pry the panel outward. It is secured by clips, so apply firm but controlled pressure until it pops free. With the side panel removed, you will now see a single screw securing the long trim. Use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the screw. The long trim is held in place by several clips along its length. On the side of the trim, you will see 2 clips. Use your trim tool to release these first. Then work your way across the dashboard, gently prying to release each clip one by one until the entire trim piece comes off. Now that the long trim piece has been removed, you can proceed with taking out the glove box housing. The housing is secured with several screws and bolts in different locations. There are 2 screws along the top edge, 3 screws on the side, and 4 bolts along the bottom edge. Start by removing the 2 upper screws using a Phillips head screwdriver. Next, move to the side of the housing. You will find 3 screws that were hidden behind the side panel you removed earlier. Carefully remove all 3 screws and set them aside. Next, use a 10mm socket wrench to remove each bolt one by one. With all screws and bolts removed, the housing will still be held in place by a few clips that lock it tightly to the surrounding dashboard trim. You will also notice the housing is clipped on the side. Use a plastic trim tool or a flathead screwdriver to carefully pry that clip open. Once the clip releases, you can pull the housing out smoothly without forcing it. Hold the housing firmly and pull it straight toward you. You will hear and feel the clips pop loose as they disengage. Be gentle as you pull the housing forward. There are wiring harnesses attached behind it, and pulling too hard can damage the connectors or stretch the wires. At the top of the housing, you will notice the glove box light. This light is a bit different. Instead of a single plastic connector, it uses 2 separate wires that slide directly onto the metal terminals of the bulb. Because of that, it is much easier to remove the entire light assembly than to try disconnecting those individual wires. Just press the light downward and it will pop out of its holder. Set it aside so it does not get in your way. You will also see that the glove box housing is hooked and clipped into the side trim near the door. Push the housing trim inward while gently pulling the side trim outward. You'll feel the clip let go. Once that side pops free, lift the housing slightly to release the hook from the trim. At this stage, the housing is mostly loose, but it's still connected to the glove box light switch near the bottom edge. Before removing the housing completely, disconnect this switch. Press the small release tab on the side of the connector and pull it straight out. Once that connector is off, the housing is free and you can take it out of the vehicle. Now that the glove box housing has been removed, you'll notice the passenger side shower duct, a plastic air duct that directs airflow towards the footwell area. To take it out, grab a Phillips head screwdriver and locate the single screw securing it at the bottom. Loosen and remove this screw. Once the screw is out, the duct is still clipped into the housing from the top. To release the clip, grip the duct firmly near the top and pull it straight outward until it pops free. With the shower duct removed, you now have a clear access to the intake actuator mounted on the side of the cabin air filter compartment. However, you'll notice that a wiring harness runs right across the front of the actuator. Before you can remove the actuator, you will have to move this harness aside. The harness is secured to the HVAC housing with two clips, one positioned above the actuator and another just below it. These clips hold the wiring firmly in place, so take your time and remove them carefully to avoid damaging the wires. I'm using a pick tool to squeeze the locking tabs on the upper clip. The lower clip is much easier to access, so I'm just using a pair of needle nose pliers to unclip it. With both clips released, you can now move the wiring harness out of the way. Next, disconnect the electrical connector from the intake actuator. Press down on the locking tab and gently pull the connector straight out. Avoid pulling the wires to prevent any damage. Now we have to remove the screws. The air door actuator is held in place by 3 Phillips head screws. The challenge here is the extremely tight space around the actuator. There isn't enough room to get a standard screwdriver in, and even a small stubby screwdriver will not fit here. To work around this, I'm using a simple but very effective trick. Take a Phillips head bit from your screwdriver bit set, the same type you would normally put into a drill or a driver. Place the bit into a pair of vice grips and tighten them firmly so the bit is locked in place. Make sure it's clamped securely. You don't want the bit slipping while you're turning it. Once the bit is held tightly in the vice grips, position the bit onto the first screw head. Now begin loosening the screw by slowly turning the vice grip. You only need to break the screw loose. Just a small turn is enough. After the screw is loosened, remove the vice grip and take the bit out. Then continue unthreading the screw by hand. Because the screw is already loose, you can now rotate the bit with your fingers and back the screw out completely. Repeat the same process for the other 2 screws. It's a bit time consuming, but in the tight space around the actuator, this method works perfectly. Once all 3 screws are out, the intake actuator is ready to slide off the HVAC housing. Carefully pull the actuator straight off the mounting shaft. Here is a close-up of the intake actuator. This is the part number. Before installing the new actuator, make sure the keyed shaft on the HVAC unit and the slot on the actuator are properly aligned. The actuator only fits one way, so take a moment to match their positions carefully. Once they are lined up, slide the new actuator straight onto the shaft until it sits flush against the mounting surface. Next, reinstall the 3 screws you removed earlier. Position the screw, then take the same loose Phillips head bit you used earlier and hand tighten the screw. Next, clamp the bit back into the vice grips just like before. Carefully seat the bit on the screw head and use the vice grip to tighten the screw the rest of the way. Repeat this process for the remaining screws. Next, reconnect the electrical connector by pushing it in until you hear or feel it click into place. Make sure it is fully seated and locked in place. With the actuator firmly installed, the next step is to put the wiring harness back into place. Line up each clip with its mounting hole on the HVAC housing, then press the wiring harness firmly into place. You should hear or feel a solid click as each clip locks into place. At this stage, you can reconnect the battery, shift the gear to park, and start the vehicle to test the new actuator. Turn on the AC and switch between recirculation and fresh air modes. Watch and listen for the actuator to move smoothly without clicking or hesitation. If everything works normally, turn the ignition off and move on to reassembly. Start by reinstalling the shower duct that you removed earlier. Position it back into place under the dash, aligning it with its mounting point. Once it's seated, reinstall the single screw at the bottom. Now it's time to reinstall the glove box housing. Carefully bring the housing back towards the dashboard and hold it close to its mounting area. Before fitting anything into place, reconnect the electrical connector for the glove box light switch. Line up the connector with the socket, then push it straight in until you hear or feel a solid click. Next, focus on the side of the housing that hooks into the side trim. Lift that side slightly and slide the hook back into its slot in the trim. Make sure the hook is properly seated. At the top of the housing, reinstall the glove box light. Position it under its opening and press it in until it snaps into position. With the light in place, guide the entire housing into its original position inside the dashboard. Gently but firmly push the housing inward, making sure the edges sit evenly all the way around. Work your way across the front and sides, pressing until you hear the clips snapping into place. Don't forget the side trim. Press the side trim toward the housing until the clip on that side locks in place. Once the housing is fully seated, reinstall all the 5 screws along the top and sides. Also, reinstall the 4 bolts along the bottom edge. Make sure they are tight, but not too tight. You do not want to damage the housing. With the housing installed, you can now put the long dashboard trim piece back on. Position the trim along the dash, aligning all the tabs and mounting points. Starting from one end, press along the length of the trim, engaging each clip one by one. Apply steady, even pressure so the trim sits flush without bending or cracking. After all the clips are locked in, reinstall the screw on the side of the dashboard to secure the trim. Then take the small side cover you removed earlier. Line it up with its mounting points on the dash and press it in gently. The retaining clips will snap in as you apply pressure. Once it's flush, press the rubber door weather strip back into its original position, making sure it sits smoothly without any twists. Next, reinstall the upper center console cover. Lay it back into position, making sure the edges line up correctly. Press down along the sides and toward the front until all the clips engage. The panel should sit down evenly with no gaps. Now you can reinstall the glove box itself. Hold it near the opening and line up the hinge points at the bottom. Slide the hinge pins straight into their mounts. They will pop into place once fully seated. Next, reconnect the damper arm on the side by aligning the hole and snapping it back onto the mounting post. Reinstall the glove box toppers by inserting them into their slots and turning them clockwise to lock them in place. Finally, reinstall the crash pad undercover. Slide the rear hooks into the slots first. Then lift the front of the panel and press upward until both locking tabs snap into place. The cover should sit tight against the bottom of the dashboard with no loose edges. And that's how you replace the air intake door actuator in a 4th generation Kia Sportage. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and subscribe to Weeze Join for more DIY car maintenance videos. Thanks for watching.